What's going on, guys? It's Fantasy Stock Exchange here, bringing you another installment of our Dynasty Decision Series we do over here at the Fantasy Stock Exchange YouTube channel, where you guys send us your teams, you guys send us your questions, and we break it down on video, trying to win you guys your championships. But before we get into today's episode, Corey, how you doing today?
Yep, of course. You guys know the drill. It's become a trend now that you guys are sending us questions on Excel sheets, which we very much appreciate. It saves us a lot of time organizing sleeper screenshots and stuff like that. So if you guys want to be featured on an upcoming episode of Dynasty Decisions, you have a trade question, you have a rookie draft coming up, whatever the case is, please do your best to organize your team and whatever your question is and whatever you're inquiring about in like an Excel format. And then we can just, quickly throw it on the screen while we're talking about it. Makes our lives a lot easier.
Yeah, 100%. It just makes it a lot swifter, a lot easier of a process, and organizing these docs in preparation for these shows. But anyways, let's get into these first teams. But before we do that, gonna hit the intro on y'all. Okay, so Corey, start off. Flunger's team. Break it down.
Real quick, I just want to talk about a quick announcement. If you guys are using our Underdog code, we know you guys can see at the bottom of the screen right now, $25, you get a deposit match back to get a free entry into Best Ball Mania 2. You get both of our draft guides for free. After you use our code, please reach out to us and tell us that you've used our code, because as of right now, we don't have a situation set up where we can know automatically that you've used our code. So Underdog has to physically tell us who used it when we ask them. So if you use our code, please reach out to us and then we'll reach out to them, get your email information, set you up for the draft guide. Yep. All that being said, let's get into Flunger's team. That's why we're here right now. And you guys can see his team on the screen right now. He has a pretty solid team. He's got Justin Herbert, Derrick Henry, Antonio Gibson, Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, and then a lot of other players there. This is the end product. And he just had his startup draft, and he wants some thoughts on the trades that he made during his startup draft to end up with this team. And I love both of these trades. I know we went over this, pre-show, and he traded down from the 109, which you're an advocate of always, is trading down in the first round early in the draft in general. And at the 109, you're looking probably at a Dalvin Cook, a Jonathan Taylor, a Tyreek Hill, potentially, maybe a quarterback, given the fact that it's a super flex format. He traded down to the 203, and he got Derrick Henry there, right? So you traded down from a running back potentially to get Derrick Henry, and he also got in return a Justin Herbert at the 510. This is a one quarterback league. I forgot to mention that. 803, he got Tyler Boyd. He also got that in the package, and a 2022 second. So you traded down 5 spots in the first round, still got an elite running back, and you got a elite young quarterback, a pretty solid wide receiver option, and a second round pick next year. Absolutely love that deal for you.
Yeah, 100%. You absolutely snapped that deal off. And that's why I'm always an advocate of trading down, because you're able to get a package of a 2, a 5, an 8, and a rookie second for moving down 4 spots. Just take the value every time there and run. But anyways, we can get into that second startup deal where he ended up trading Austin Eckler straight up for Antonio Gibson and the 909, which it says apparently he later traded away. So overall, value-wise, it looks like it would be a Terrace Marshall, Will Fuller type, and Antonio Gibson straight up for Eckler. And we actually both have Gibson ranked ahead of Eckler in our Dynasty ranking. So the fact that you're able to get Gibson plus just kind of goes to show that you understand the value of trading down, and you did an excellent job in doing so in both of these moves.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think both of those moves benefited your team. And then lastly, he also wants to know what he should do, if he should try and make some more deals, try and improve his team. And specifically what he was wondering is with Derrick Henry and Adam Thielen, given the fact that they're both depreciating assets, they're both older players, should he be looking to move them mid-season or something like that to a contender? And I would say no, because one, you are a contender. So I would just keep them and try and win. And Derrick Henry specifically, this is probably a whole nother topic, but with Derrick Henry, I feel like your best case, situation with as a Derrick Henry owner is to just ride him out. Whenever he breaks, you just let him break down, because you're not going to get nearly what you need to get from a guy like Derrick Henry. And if you do, obviously then move him, but nobody's going to be willing to give you an Antonio Gibson who's already on your team, but like a Cam Akers for Derrick Henry. Like nobody's going to do that, because Cam Akers is like 6 years younger than Derrick Henry. You're probably looking at a situation where you're going to get a lot of picks that you're not going to know what you're getting. And Derrick Henry is just such a stable, elite fantasy asset that you're better off just riding him out into the sunset.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this team right now, you are clearly a win now team. I mean, you got absolute assets to contend for that championship this year. So just ride Henry out. I mean, he should be a top 5, top 6 at minimum back this year. And in general, like that is going to be a type of workhorse that can carry your team to that promised land. So, anyways, anything else you want to say on his team, or can we move on to the next one?
No, that's probably about it. I would also consider potentially getting a better contingency plan behind Darren Waller, because we know Darren Waller is a bit of an older player himself. I'd be looking to, maybe acquire like a Hunter Long or something, or a Pat Fryermuth or something like that if you can for cheap, just to have somebody behind Darren Waller in case Darren Waller gets injured or something like that, and to just have a young guy to develop behind him. All right, next up is going to be Frank's team, and we didn't actually get a scoring format from him. He didn't actually specify if this was Superflex, non-Superflex, whatever the case is, but you can see on the screen right there, it looks like he has a very shallow team, either that or he didn't. I don't know if this is just his main guys that are on his team or whatever, but he wants to know what direction he should go in his rookie draft based on the information that we have. We'll try and answer that the best that we can. Currently, he has the 101s, the first overall pick, the number 23 overall pick, which would be about the 211, and a 12-teamer. Number 30 overall, which is like the 306. So to me, if this is a super flex, that 101, I would probably go for a quarterback, because you have Burrow and Tua, and we don't know what else. But given the fact that he only sent 2 quarterbacks, I'm assuming it's a 1 quarterback league. So my direction that I'd be going with that pick is Najee Harris, because you have Cam Akers, who's a solidified stud running back for the future. And then behind that, you have Miles Sanders, who, in my opinion, has a lot of question marks. Chase Edmonds, who's probably a shorter shelf life type of asset as well, even though he is young. So to me, I think the obvious pick is Najee Harris in a 1 quarterback format.
Absolutely. Again, this best player available, and you're able to pair Harris with Akers to be your 2 young. I mean, you still got Sanders and Edmonds as well, but overall, you're going to have a very strong nucleus at the running back position, which we do both believe when you want to make a contender, you want to be strong at that position because it's the most scarce. So overall, 101, Najee Harris in a 1 quarterback, Trevor Lawrence or Trey Lance, personally for us, in a super flex type league. So we can move on to that 23rd overall pick. And again, that's going to be what the 211.
Yeah, the 211. I would just go best player available there. If this is a super flex league and these are your only 2 significant quarterbacks, I don't hate taking a Kellen Mond with that pick. If this isn't a super flex league, you might be able to get another quarterback there. You might be able to get a Justin Fields or even a Mac Jones if you wanted to add that to your quarterback room in a 1 quarterback format. But I think your best option is just go best player available, and most likely that's going to be a wide receiver. It's going to be Terrace Marshall, Nico Collins,
De'Ami Brown,
Amari Rogers, or even a Rondell Moore somehow slips there, something like that. Probably in that neighborhood. I probably wouldn't reach for like a Chuba Hubbard or a Kenny Gainwell or anything like that, because I know some people will pick him in the 2nd round. I personally, in the 2nd round, at the back of the 2nd, you're better off just picking receivers.
Yep, absolutely. And we can go to that 306 in the same type of area in terms of range of player. Just kind of look at best player available, and you guys can
Josh
see.
Palmer's a guy that I like in the 3rd round. So if you wanted to go for someone like that, he's, set to be probably the number 2 or number 3 option for Justin Herbert for the foreseeable future. So I don't hate him in the 3rd round. And we have a whole, litany of videos talking about rookie sleepers that you can check out as well.
Yep, absolutely. So overall, we think we can move on to the next team here.
Yep.
All right. And that team is going to be something that we hope our fantasy assets don't have to go through in the 2021 season. It's going to be ACL Tears Team. And you guys can see it on the screen. And he says, this is his new Dynasty startup roster, which is under 2 weeks old. I am weak at wide receiver and tight end, and I'm not convinced Gaskin is a great RB3. Feels like I can make the playoffs, but I can lose in the first week. Should I trade to win now, trade to rebuild, or just hold and wait until the season starts? Thanks for the advice. So overall, if you're looking at the roster, did he mention that if it was a super flex or anything?
So it's a 12-team super flex tight end premium, 1.5 PPR for tight ends. It's full PPR.
I see it. I see it now in the picture. Yeah. Okay. So overall, I mean, you got Dak and Tannehill as your 2 starting quarterbacks, Chubb, Jones, Gaskin, Javonte as your main running backs. Very solid wide receiver core, maybe lacking a true 3. I do like Pittman, but he hasn't really proven it yet. Tanyan at tight end's kind of, it's okay, I guess.
He basically, the big thing with this team is he wants to know, is he in the dreaded, purgatory, right? Is he an average team? And I'm afraid to say that you might be, to be honest. And the thing that really kind of worries me about your team is that everybody that you have that's really useful right now is in their prime. Like you have Tannehill, who's a bit of an older quarterback. You have Chubb, you have Aaron Jones, you have Allen Robinson. Those are like some of your most core players. So I'm not necessarily looking to tear this down or anything, but At the same time, you probably want to try and make some moves to get younger, because there's a good chance that, like you said, you might get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, because that's about, you're probably about the 6th or 7th best team in your league. So at the same time, though, like when you're in this situation, it's really hard to know what to do, right? Like maybe you try and compete this year, try and acquire a player here and there. But at the same time, you're probably better off just tearing it down at some point too.
When I'm unsure of what to do with the team, which, like, I'm going to be honest, I haven't really gotten into the situation before, but my general philosophy is, if I don't know if I can compete for a championship, I'm probably not in position to compete for a championship. And if that's the case, this is a team I would personally suggest you trade away those older assets. As much as I love Chubb, as much as I love Aaron Jones, as much as I love Robert Tonyan, Ryan Tannehill, if I can get younger at those positions, maybe acquire 2022 and 2023 picks and really try to reload and reprime this team up to be a top flight type of contender in 2022 or maybe 2023 if you want to prolong it an extra year. If you have the financial situation to be able to prolong it and go all in on those years, that's personally what I do. Because again, I hate being in purgatory. I either want to be the worst team in my league, or at least a bottom 3 team, or I want to have a top 3, no argument's sake type of team. And I just think you're kind of falling in that middle ground right now. So you got to be straightforward with yourself. You say, looking at the other teams in your league, is this one of the top 3 or 4 teams? If your answer is no, you know what to do. You rebuild for 2022, you rebuild for 2023, and you become that top 3, top 4 team. That's where I'm at. I mean, you have a very, very bountiful set of assets on this team. So you could get a boatload of picks. You could get a boatload of young assets. You could really get overall packages to not only make your team younger, but to, in fact, add depth when doing so. Because you still got a really young piece in Javonte Williams. If you can kind of build your young core of running backs, your young core of receivers around him, I mean, Terry McLaurin kind of falls into that as well, being 25. I think you have potential to really make this a swift and quick transition to be a top flight team in 2022, 2023. But anyways, I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I love kind of talking hypothetical scenarios on where to go with your team.
Yeah. I think what I would do is kind of go for like a partial compete this year, because you probably don't have any other choice. I don't think fire sailing your team before, like at this time, this is probably not the optimal time to do it. Once you're, into rookie draft and stuff and in season, when people are going to value your assets more, is probably when to do it. So if you can move a guy like Jared Goff in season, especially because he's a guy that someone will, they'll pay up for just because he's starting quarterback. If you can move, a Nick Chubb, if somebody gets like a big injury or something like that, I think that's probably when you should do it. So probably just sit pat for now and look to, strike when the iron's hot. If somebody loses a big asset, that's a contending team, they'll come calling you if you're looking to tear it down.
Next team on the docket for today, we're going to be talking about Justin Yong's team. So you guys can see it on the screen, but it is a super flex league. And he also provides context into a recent deal he did. He ended up getting a great package, in my opinion. He got Cortland Sutton, McCole Hardman, a 2022 first and second in exchange for Traquan Smith and Josh Jacobs. Straight off the bat, absolutely great sell on Jacobs there. I love him personally in terms of where his overall value has been amongst the community. But this is not the type of value that you usually see in the community. Usually you'll see maybe Hardman in a second get offered for him. But the fact that you're able to get Sutton, a first, a second, and Hardman for Jacobs and what I consider fodder and Traquan Smith, I think you did a great job there.
Yeah, and Hardman, like if you look at this deal, if you break this down, Hardman over Smith, right? Like easily. And then you got Sutton, a first and a 2023 second for Jacobs. I think that's appropriate value. As much as I probably like Jacobs even more than you do. And I think given the fact that you guys can see his team on the screen, Jacobs was his RB2, and it looks like he can compete, right? He's got 2 absolutely difference-making quarterbacks. He has a difference-making tight end. He has a difference-making wide receiver 1 and a pretty good running back 1 as well. He probably could compete, and I think that's what makes me a little hesitant to make a deal like this, because Jacobs would have been a key piece in that. But at the same time, you got, you may have extended your longevity because we don't really know what Jacobs' future is going to entail. It doesn't look like the Raiders really know what they're doing, to be honest. So, getting yourself out of an ambiguous situation like that and getting a draft asset plus a stud young receiver is always a good move.
Yep, for sure. So anything else you want to say on that? Oh, he actually asked too what running backs you should look into, like some picks and someone else. I mean, I would have said a Mike Davis, but I mean, you already have him on your roster.
I don't know if I would force anything, to be honest, because it'd be really hard for you to go out and acquire somebody right now because you don't really like when people trade away running backs, they generally want another running back or a quarterback in return, because those are the two most valuable positions in Superflex. You don't really have that kind of position. Like, it'd be hard for you to just go, oh, I'm going to take that first rounder in Cortland Sutton and go try and get a different running back, because you're probably only going to get a running back similar to Josh Jacobs, like a Miles Sanders or a David Montgomery. So that's probably not worth it for you. You're probably better off just maybe you want to go and trade for like a lower end guy, but you have Kareem Hunt, you have Michael Carter, you have some guys behind Mike Davis and Joe Mixon that should be valuable pieces. And like I said, your QBs, your tight end, and Justin Jefferson should be the foundation of your team.
Yep. Absolutely. So with that being said, we can go into the next team and scenario from Hudson Woods. And he says, my question is based around advice as to what I should do for the betterment of my roster. And when I read this, I'm like, man, this sounds like it's coming straight from my mouth, because the next thing he says is, I have always been someone who values appreciating assets in the hopes they will reach their peak at the same time to make a real run at the championship. And I love that you said it exactly like this, because this is exactly how I view it as well. You want guys that can peak at the same time to optimize your window of winning. So he outlines a team. So it's 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, in a 1 quarterback PPR league. And he was able to get freaking Jamar Chase at the 105 in a 1 quarterback league. You guys can see the team on the screen. Absolutely ridiculous young receiving core. I mean, if you were to talk right now, some people on Twitter would probably have those top 4 guys in particular in their top 10 of Dynasty wide receivers. And adding to that, you still got Ayuk and Claypool. That receiving core
Claypool's is wide receiver 6.
Ridiculous. So, overall, he kind of asks in terms of advice what he should do to take his roster to that next level. And I mean, the clear issue here would be your running back position, because after CEH, you simply don't really have a lot to deal with there. I mean, David Johnson, Josh Kelly, Elijah Mitchell, and Kenneth Gainwell. My advice, assuming
I'm selling DK. That's the first thing that popped into my head when I saw this team was to sell DK, because I mean, we've talked about it on previous Dynasty Decisions shows. Just because Russ is, backpedaling his comments about wanting to leave the Seahawks, I don't think that's the end of the story. I think he's going to eventually be out of there. And then at that point, we have question marks about the Seahawks. One, the only reason DK Metcalf is valuable now is because obviously he's really talented, but the only reason he's as valuable as he is because Russell Wilson is a super efficient passer. If Pete Carroll's still there, they might bring in like a game manager quarterback, right? And run the football, because that's what Pete Carroll wants to do. And how valuable is DK Metcalf going to be, right? We could be talking about a guy that only gets 110 targets a season. And as talented as he is, that's not enough volume for him to produce top 10 wide receiver value. So if I have DK Metcalf right now, I'm going to try and sell him. And I think for DK Metcalf, you should be able to get a very good running back in return.
Yeah, we're talking like for DK Metcalf straight up, you could try to go after like an Antonio Gibson type.
Exactly the running back I was thinking too.
Yeah, and if you could pull something like that off and you have a nucleus of Mahomes, CH, Gibson.
And Chase Claypool is still your wide receiver 5.
Yeah, that is absurd. So overall, you did a fantastic job acquiring those appreciating assets and not panicking when you're on the clock. A lot of people would go into that 105 think, oh, yeah, I'm probably going to get like, I don't know, an ETN or Javonte Williams.
The reason he was probably there is because people probably picked ETN and Javonte Williams ahead of him.
Yep. So overall, I like that. Don't panic. Just take whoever is best available and thank your league mates because they screwed up in letting Jamar Chase fall to you at the 105. Great pick there. So anyways, we can get on to the next team and scenario. So we got Steven's team. You guys see it on the screen. It's a Superflex PPR 10-team Dynasty League. And yeah, we got to quickly outline the bad trade. So you guys should basically see the picture of Michael Scott on the screen right now because he gave up Mark Andrews, Javonte Williams, Amari Cooper, and if that wasn't enough, also a second-round pick for Sermon, Gaskin, and Laviska.
He knows he fucked up. Like he told me, like in the DM, he was like, "You guys can rip me for the trade. Like it was pretty bad." Yeah, like I honestly don't know what was going through your head when you made this trade. You said you weren't that high on Amari Cooper and Mark Andrews. I mean, you must be very low on them in that case because I probably, and I told Danny this pre-show, if this trade was Javonte Williams in a second rounder, I still wouldn't do it because I think Javonte Williams is that much of a difference maker at the position. Then you add in a guy in Mark Andrews, who I'm super high on, and Amari Cooper, who I also think is going to be a borderline top 5 receiver this year. Definitely top 10, top 12 at minimum. So definitely a rough trade that you made. Basically, what he wants to know is how can he recover? He said the league is very top heavy. There's some teams out there that have some elite quarterback stacks of young players and elite running back cores and stuff. And it's a 10-team league, right? So there's obviously going to be better teams in a 10-teamer than in a 12-teamer. I think he's kind of in purgatory right now with his roster, given the fact that it's a 10-team league. I would look to sell some of these pieces and rebuild.
I'm selling all of them.
Yeah, I'm fire selling Lamar Jackson, Calvin Ridley specifically, Austin Eckler for sure too. I mean, like
Myles Gaskin.
Yeah, like he has all of his picks in 2023. He's just missing his second rounder, obviously in 2022. But I'm looking to acquire draft assets because I can't remember exactly how top heavy the league was, but he sent me the teams and I read them like, okay, these teams are like, there's no way you could beat these teams. Like there's not a chance. It's like fantasy's unpredictable, but he's not going to beat these teams. So you might as well just rebuild for 2023 and beyond. Yeah.
I mean, realistically here, I'm just simply selling all those prime assets for young players and picks. You want to get as much depth and as much young talent as you possibly can because I don't like being pessimistic, especially when I'm not talking about myself. But there's just simply no chance you're going to win this year. I'm sorry. Try to rebuild. I'd say 2023, 2024 is your honey spot for when you're going to want to make a real push with your team. Because you still got young assets. I mean, you still got that Higgins, that Claypool, Laviska Shenault. Like you still got youngish players that if you're able to rebuild the nucleus of your team, will be able to be key contributors for you in 2023. So anyways,
I would sell pretty much all of your running backs though. You got Eckler, Gaskin, Mostert, and Mike Davis. All those guys are like short-term assets. Sell them all.
Yep.
Like
Jamal
that's exactly what I'm doing. And here's to give him his just due. He says one team has Diggs, Hopkins, and Devontae Adams as their top 3 receivers. Another team has Dak, Mahomes, and Trevor Lawrence as their top 3 quarterbacks. And they have CEH, DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson on their team. He said another has Akers, Saquon, JT, and Gibson as their top 4 running backs. So like I said, man, like you can't compete with this team. You might as well tear the shit down and rebuild.
For sure. So we, anyways, sorry for roasting you the whole time, but
I mean, he told us to roast him. So
we can head on to the next team, and that's going to be Mucles Team.
Sorry, me and Danny are both bodybuilders, but the difference is that Danny is building a better body than I am. So what Muscles is asking us, obviously you guys can see his team on the screen right now. He said he's missed the playoffs the last 2 years, and he won a consolation bracket to obtain the 113, which I think it's common. I've heard a lot of people do that. He's asking, can he compete or is he stuck in no man's land? It seems to be the theme of this show. We'll definitely have you guys comment on that at the end of the video.
No man's land.
Yeah. So he has the 113, the 205, and the 305. He's asking, can he compete? And what should you do with those picks? So my first thought is, yes, you can compete. I think your team is good enough to compete. You have 4 options at QB, one in Jalen Hurts, who I think is going to be a pretty big difference maker this year, at least. And then you have Saquon and Cam Akers, like 2 of my top 6 dynasty running backs. Kareem Hunt's a solid RB3. You have Justin Jefferson and Terry McLaurin, top 2 receivers. It doesn't get much better than that in terms of young stud receivers. Kenny Golladay also, TJ Hawkinson. You got a good team, dude. I would just focus on trying to hit on your draft picks, and you should be able to just, keep going and retool this thing. You don't need to, sell any assets or anything like that, because I think your team is good enough as it is.
Yeah, and you're talking about that 113. Pencil it, etch it in, whatever you have to do. That 113 is Elijah Moore if he's on the board. That's what I'm seeing. Elijah Moore, I've said it since the offseason. He is my wide receiver 3 as a rookie. I know it's between him and Bateman. It's so fucking close for me.
I have Bateman. I would pick Bateman over him.
I would personally go Elijah Moore, but they are literally back to back. You can't go wrong regardless. And in general, either of those young receivers to come in and supplement your wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, you don't really have to rely upon them day one. You are in such a nice little position with that wide receiver core, in my opinion. So, I really like what you're doing there.
I didn't mention, actually, it is a 1 quarterback league. So Jalen Hurts is his starting quarterback. Darnold, Tua, and Winston are all just bench pieces for him. So again, it's a 1 quarterback league at that 113 spot. If you wanted to add Trevor Lawrence or Trey Lance, you could always do that too. If if Bateman's gone and Smith is gone and Elijah Moore's gone, and you don't want to pick a Trey Sermon or something like that, you could always just add a quarterback with that pick. And again, at the 205, if there's another quarterback there, if you don't go QB at 113, you could add a quarterback there, because your quarterbacks are good. I think they're fine. But if Trey Lance or Trevor Lawrence is there at 113 or 205, those guys are real difference makers. And Justin Fields too, because of his rushing ability. They're all difference making quarterbacks. And I think that could be a part of your team that's a little bit overlooked in a 1 quarterback dynasty format. But if you get a dual threat dude as your QB, and Jalen Hurts will be that guy for this year, but we don't know what his future is going forward. I think that's a direction that I would lean with that 205, especially because that's probably a high value pick for a one quarterback league. And then, like we said, just go best player available. A lot of wide receivers are going to be available in that area. Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman at that 205. If none of those quarterbacks are there, you could go for a Terrace Marshall, a De'Ami Brown, even a Rondell Moore if you wanted to go with that. And then at 305, Nico Collins, you could go, with a tight end, you could go with a Pat Freiermuth and have him develop behind Hawkinson or something like that.
Yeah, sorry, Montreal just scored on the monitor. Nice. I fully agree with you there. And again, at that 305, you mentioned any of those type of guys. You want to go tight end, you want to go with a sleeper receiver, maybe a Nico Collins. I think you're in a really good position there. So just take one of the sleepers. And if you guys need any help on what type of sleepers you can take in the third round, we have 2 separate videos on the freaking channel outlining those later round guys. So quick shout out for that. I know one of them is at about 7,500. The other one's at over 3,000. So you guys are killing it with that support. So anyways, we can get on to AJDM's deal. And this is a startup trade by the looks of it. And basically here he moved down 10 picks in the 4th round, recouped that in the 5th round. So basically you see the 10 pick swap between the 4th and the 5th, but he was also able to get a full round of value from the 7th to the 6th. So overall, if you're looking at this is a very fair trade overall. But if you guys know me, you know which side of the deal I'd rather be on. I would move down 10 picks and end up getting a net gain of, what would that be? 13 picks between the 7th and 6th any day of the week for me personally. Again, this is going to be fully tier dependent. Like if there's a huge tier drop off from the 401 to 411, maybe you're hesitant. But in general, from the drafts that I've been in, 401 to 411 has typically been a similar tier type of player. So if I'm able to get that additional 10 pick net gain, I'm taking that anytime, assuming the tiers are similar.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to pull up our listener league draft just for reference. At the 401? 401. 401 was Joe Mixon. The 411 was Allen Robinson. So to me, like not too much of a difference. DJ Moore went shortly after that. Chris Carson, Javonte Williams went shortly after that. So to me, not a big difference in terms of a teardrop from Joe Mixon, and even Jamar Chase went at the pick before Joe Mixon. David Montgomery went shortly after him. So I think you're looking at a much, and that again, I talk about this all the time, but between the 4th and the 8th round in a dynasty startup, that's where the like honeypot of like young potential breakout candidates are. And the more picks you can get in that range, the more, swings of the bat you have at guys like Chase Claypool, at guys like Brandon Ayuk that could become elite dynasty assets for you.
Yep, 100%. So overall, I do like that deal for you. I think he actually ended up taking it. I know it says counter / accept there, but I do think he ended up taking it. So I do like that deal for you. Anyways, we can get on to the next team, and that's going to be one of our listener league members himself. We can take it away with Unnecessary Roughness, which is, I believe, Jeff. So
I think it's Jeff. Yeah.
Yep. So overall, you can take it away. You guys can see the team on the screen, but he mentions in the comments, full-fledged rebuild. What moves should he make to acquire more draft capital? He believes he's not competing until at least 2023, and he considered moving Pitts for the 2022 first or 2023 first and Adam Troutman. Would you move Pitts? Would you move or move at someone else to acquire draft capital? What would you basically do with this overall roster to be able to maximize that window in 2023 and beyond? So looking at the team right now, you guys can see his running back core is basically non-existent. His quarterbacks are absolutely stacked. I mean, you're talking about a young superflex core of Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance.
He had a lot of first-round picks, clearly, this year, because he has Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, and Kyle Pitts. Those are like, 6 of the top 8 picks overall. So he definitely had a lot of picks this year. And he's, unfortunately, I'm kind of surprised he doesn't have more picks in the future for a team like this. But to me, the quarterbacks are what stand out as picks, assets I would move in order to acquire more draft capital. Trevor Lawrence specifically, because I don't really believe in Trevor Lawrence long-term, as blasphemous as that sounds. I don't really like what the Jacksonville Jaguars are doing. That sounds like a broken record, but if I'm going to move any of the quarterbacks, it would probably be Trevor Lawrence, because you could probably get the most for him. And he's also the one I believe in the least in terms of his situation around him. So if you could try and move Trevor Lawrence, for multiple firsts, like if you could get a 2022 first and a 2023 first for Trevor Lawrence, and then maybe a piece on top of that, that would be a pretty solid deal. You can see all of his draft capital along the right side there. He has 2 firsts in 2023, but he only has mid-round picks, seconds, and thirds next year. So I mean, you're probably looking at a productive struggle for at least 2 years, and then you could start to build out this team. But you have some young pieces, especially at receiver, that are going to be entering their primes about 3 years from now. So as long as you can add running backs to your roster and add, I would just hold on to Kyle Pitts, first of all. The trade you mentioned, 2022 first, a 2023 first, and Adam Troutman for Kyle Pitts, that's not enough. I would hold on to Kyle Pitts personally.
Great. Maybe you could try to get a I don't mind Adam Troutman, but if you get someone like a little bit better, I mean,
No fan.
if you could try for that, maybe not exactly that area, but like I was gonna say Cole Kmet, but you already have Cole Kmet, but maybe someone does Irv Smith. Maybe they saw that quote unquote report, like offseason report.
I just wouldn't move Pitts. Period. I think he's only going to go up in value.
That's fair. Yeah,
like if you're going to move Pitts, the time is probably mid-season or something when this dude's already snapping off, or it's at the end of this season when he has, a 900-yard, 7-touchdown rookie season, and everybody's touting him as the Dynasty tight end 1. Like that's when you move him. I wouldn't move him now.
Yeah, that's actually very fair. I don't know. I'm just a little. I think of all possible scenarios at once. But anyways, agreed with that. You could just hold Pitts. That is a good package. Maybe you can get a little bit more, though, in mid-season once people see, holy fuck, Kyle Pitts is averaging 60 yards per game and almost a touchdown per game as a rookie. He split out wide on over 75% of his snaps. He is a legit playmaker, not just a typical tight end. So he's a unicorn. Anyways, we can get on.
Just to recap I would try and move one of the quarterbacks, specifically Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, just because Trey Lance long-term, think about the long-term security of Trey Lance's situation. I wouldn't be moving him because even if he struggles as a rookie, he's probably going to be more productive long-term in his career because of the coaching staff and the weapons around him. So Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, field them out for offers, pun intended, and see what you can get. If you can get a 2022 first, a 2023 first, and a running back or a wide receiver, then make that deal in a heartbeat.
Yep, absolutely. So we can get on to the next team. That's going to be the TheRealJakeD. This is a super flex team. You guys can see it on the screen. In addition to this team on the screen, he's also got Elijah Moore, Jordan Love, Henry Ruggs, Javion Hawkins, and 2 2022 first-round picks in addition to this team. So overall, you guys can see, I mean, he is in a very, very nice spot from a competitive perspective in terms of longevity. I mean, you're mentioning a wide receiver core right off the bat of Metcalf, Kupp, Juju, Gallup, Ayuk, Elijah Moore, Henry Ruggs, stacked core. Yeah, Jordan Love to those quarterbacks. I mean, overall, the only thing I would say is maybe depth at running back past Dobbins and maybe a little bit of a question mark. Like as much as I love Irv Smith, you don't necessarily have that elite fantasy tight end. But aside from that, I mean, I would probably just kind of see what happens mid-season. Maybe if you believe during the season you want to deal your one, or you want to deal one or both of those ones and try to make a huge superstar acquisition. You notice your team's like, let's say in 3rd, 4th place, and you can compete. That's something you can do. Overall, you have a lot of roster flexibility to be able to make adjustments on the fly midseason, pending how your team starts off.
Right. And if Irv Smith is having like a semi-breakout season, you could sell Irv Smith plus a first for like Darren Waller or something like that and try and make a championship push or something of that nature. I think to a rebuilding team that has Darren Waller, I think your team's in good shape. I probably wouldn't mess with it too much. You have, good depth, good draft capital, good, like I meant, like he has those guys on his taxi squad that aren't even going to really need to contribute right away. Your team's solid. I would just try and compete right away.
Yep, absolutely. So we can go on to the next team, and that's going to be Detroit Fan 77's team. So basically his team, as you guys can see, Stafford, or I'm not going to read it off, but what are his chances of competing? Apparently there's a super team in his league, he says. And he asked, should he sell a quarterback midseason to a needy team? So again, looking at your team, you got a nice young stud running back core for the future. Your wide receiver, especially those top 3, are very stacked. Hawkins and Goddard at tight end. IDP I can't really speak on, but I know for a fact that at least those top 3 linebackers are going to be very productive for you at quarterback.
Jalen Smith.
You like how I did that, eh?
Yeah.
And then at quarterback, you got Stafford, Burrow. Yeah, like you're in a really good spot. I think you can be like a top 5 team. Like I think you can get in the playoffs for sure.
Bro, I think he might. Like says he has a super team. Like if there's a super team in your league, your team definitely is the second best. Like in my opinion, I think you go 5 deep at quarterback. Like that's pretty rare.
That's fair, actually.
Format. So absolutely, I'd be trying to sell a quarterback midseason to a needy team, and specifically, I'd be looking to sell either Stafford or Wentz because you have 2 young studs in Trey Lance and potentially Mac Jones. From all reports, he sounds like he's really good. and Joe Burrow. So like you have a really young quarterback core. Matt Stafford and Carson Wentz would be the QBs that I would look to deal midseason.
I completely miss Javonte Williams and some of those receivers he has, including Samuel, Boyd, and Marshall. So
he's got a great team.
Yeah,
your chances of competing, if there's a super team in your league, I would imagine your team is the second best. Unless this is like, he didn't say how many teams are in this league. If it's like an 8-team format or a 10-team format, then we might be having a different conversation. But even if it's a 10-team, I still would think this is probably one of the better teams in the league.
Yep, absolutely. So I do think you're in a good spot. I kind of under quote unquote estimated your team at first, but like it is a very good team. You see how it's competing with that super team. If your super team is just blowing everyone out of the water, maybe you can adjust. But even if you got plentiful quarterbacks, you're able to deal on the fly if need be. So you're in a really good spot. We can go on to the next team though, and that's going to be J615. You guys can see the team on the screen. And basically, he wanted us to talk about this trade that he made and overall what he should do with his team. So the first deal that he made, again, being the Mixon owner, was able to ship off Justin Jackson in a future third, assuming it's going to be late, for Chris Evans in a fourth. And again, I don't mind this move whatsoever. Chris Evans is a young, talented prospect. We know the concerns of durability with Joe Mixon. I don't mind making that move to secure that running back position, considering that I do think Evans can be a marginal upgrade over what Justin Jackson offers. So I do think that's a fine move. And if you're looking at the team overall, I mean, you mentioned it, Mahomes, Ryan, Goff, Zach Wilson at quarterback in particular, running backs, Dobbins, Mixon, Gibson, wide receivers. You see that, like, you got a very good team being able to compete. And in general, he doesn't mention if he has all those picks. I'm assuming that he's probably just without his third because he doesn't really say anything else about it. And that's the type of move where, say you're at the midseason mark and you're, I don't know, we'll say 6-3. And you notice you could make a very nice push to potentially compete this year. Maybe you offer Waddle in the first and go after for a superstar wide receiver to pair with that group. You're talking about Waddle in the first for DeAndre Hopkins, maybe. If the person who owns DeAndre Hopkins is probably not doing as ideal as they would want, they kind of want to I'm not going to say that again, make their team younger and want to get those younger assets with Jalen Waddle and the pick. So you could make those type of flexible moves at the deadline pending your team. But overall, looking at the basis of the team right now, I do think you're in a position to be able to compete. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think his team is definitely in good shape. He's got good balance, good youth. Everything about your team is good. So, and that trade to securing your handcuff, worth the price usually. And we don't know if Chris Evans is actually a handcuff for Joe Mixon. He's currently the backup running back in Cincinnati, but he could be a full-fledged handcuff. And if that is the case, then he's probably more valuable than what you paid for him.
He's got P. Ryan as well. So either way, he's got the handcuff.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, you secure the Bengals backfield regardless.
Yep, 100%. So we can move on to the next team before I almost said something else apart from getting younger. And that's going to be Big Al's team. So you guys can see that on the screen as well. But it's a funky format. It's 1 point for first down. And it's a tiered PPR with half PPR for running backs, full of PPR for wide receivers, and a 1.5 PPR for tight ends. And it's also a super flex. So it's quarterbacks, Rodgers, Herbert, running backs, Kamara, CH, Latavius, and some fodder underneath. Wide receivers, Adams, Julio, Marquise, some fodder, and tight ends. He's got Fant and Tunyon. So what are your initial thoughts on this team?
Yeah, I mean, he says it's a 2-quarterback league, and I only see 2 quarterbacks on it. I don't see any quarterback depth, so that definitely makes me nervous.
Let me just check. You can comment on the rest of the team. Let me just check in the DM if he sent any other quarterbacks with the team.
Right. So, I mean, when you're looking at this team, it looks like you got
Cam Newton as well.
Who else?
Cam Newton as well.
Cam Newton. Okay, all right. Yep. So it looks like he has the high-end talent, right? He's got Aaron Rodgers, he's got Justin Herbert, he's got Alvin Kamara, he's got CEH, he's got Devontae Adams. Like, you have some high-end talent here. Your depth worries me a little bit. I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of your depth. Like, I mean, Marquise Brown is your wide receiver 3. That really scares me. And same with your running back 3 being Latavius Murray, even though you have Alvin Kamara. Like, it's a pretty sketchy situation in my opinion. So looking to acquire depth would be my biggest, concern with this team.
Yep, I fully agree. Other than that, again, like if you can make moves at the deadline, assuming you have your picks, you do have a good nucleus. You just got to add the depth to it, in my opinion. So we can go on to the next team, and that's going to be Zabluco's team.
Real quick, what I wouldn't do, though, is sell an elite asset for 2 depth pieces. Like, because I've seen people do this. They'll like sell Alvin Kamara for like Miles Sanders and David Montgomery. Like, don't do that. Like, keep your studs, but try and fill out your depth either using your draft picks, in trading them, or just, keep your draft picks and try and draft your depth or something of that nature, because just trading for depth by selling a stud like Justin Herbert or Alvin Kamara or Devontae Adams and downgrading to 2 depth receivers is probably not the smartest thing in the world.
Yep, for sure. So we can get on to the next team, as I briefly mentioned. That's going to be Zabluco's team, 1 quarterback, half PPR, 12-team league. This is what he started with. You guys can see a nice formatted Excel graphic on the screen. We love to see it. Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor. So overall, he's got a lot of high-end talent. But you guys can see he made a few moves that really increased the longevity and potential for this team to be a top contender in 2022, 2023. So take it away with some of those moves, because I'm absolutely enamored with some of the stuff he was able to pull off.
Yeah, this is a productive struggle, man. Like he recognized it, right? We've talked about it. And again, comment down below no man's land if you guys have made it to this point in the video, because this is the theme of this episode, apparently. Kyler Murray, Jonathan Taylor, Tyreek Hill, and Cortland Sutton and Chase Claypool, right? Those are cornerstone pieces. But outside of that, didn't really have too much, high-end talent. Baker Mayfield's okay. Myles Gaskin's okay. Dallas Goedert's okay. And again, Cortland Sutton's pretty good as well, but he didn't have enough to compete. He recognized that, and he went out and did something about it, and he pulled off a blockbuster move that you guys can see on the screen right now. And he shipped off Tyreek Hill and Jonathan Taylor, probably his 2 best players, and got in return Justin Jefferson, who is probably on par with Tyreek Hill just in terms of value, especially if you're a rebuilding team. I would prefer Justin Jefferson than Tyreek Hill. He got Jalen Reagor and Zach Moss. Again, not the best assets in the world, but they're definitely better than the tone setter Benny Snell that he traded away. And he got the 103, which ended up being Kyle Pitts, the 203, which ended up being Terrace Marshall, and the 2 2022 first-round picks. Well done, man. Like this is exactly how it's done. If you're going to tear it down, you got 2 first-rounders, a stud young receiver, a stud young tight end, and some pretty decent young pieces to go along with it.
Yeah, no, this is exactly how you do it. Basically, let's look at the nucleus of this deal. It's basically Tyreek Hill, Jonathan Taylor for Justin Jefferson, Kyle Pitts, Terrace Marshall, and 2 future firsts. Just absolutely well done. This is a class move. And if you guys are in this type of situation where you have guys like Hill, Taylor, but you don't necessarily think you could be a top contender, these are the type of moves you go for. Absolutely great job. We can get into the second deal as well, where I don't know how
he wasn't done. He pulled off another one. And I don't even know how he did this, because there's no way that I would have accepted this if I was the other team, even if I was competing. He sold James Conner and Myles Gaskin, which, in my opinion, will be irrelevant for fantasy in 2 years. By the time he's ready to compete, they will be irrelevant for fantasy. They will be, in a worse situation. Like, they will not even be fantasy relevant, period. And he also gave up a 2nd-round pick in 2022, but that's okay. He's got 2 firsts now, or 3 firsts if he still has his. And he got Gabe Davis, who's, an exciting young receiver, a 2023 first, and anybody who knows anything about college football knows that class is expected to be very good.
Bijan Robinson.
Yeah, Bijan Robinson, and Kayshon Boutte, I believe, is in that class too. And 2023 2nd-round pick too. So again, the best asset in this deal is the 2023 first.
Easily.
The second best asset in this deal might be the 2023 second.
I agree. And like 2023 second versus 2022 second, you can kind of compare. Okay, maybe it's similar, but overall, that 2023 first is probably worth, it definitely is worth more than this whole package on the other side combined. And the fact that you're able to get Davis and that second along with it, just absolutely well done. You made clockwork. You listened to our advice and you applied it, because Zabluco, you did a great job.
And these guys that he sold might not even be relevant next year. So this 2023 first could be high, because that team might not be good. He might be going for it this year and win the championship or whatever. And then he tears it down, doesn't have his own 1st-round pick. So, I mean, well done, man. Like, you came out with 3 1st-round picks, a stud young receiver, a stud young tight end. You got the productive struggle ready to go.
Yep, 100%. So we can go on to the next team or trades, and that's going to be from NZ97. So it's a few different moves. It's actually like 5 different trades. 6. So the first one, I'm not really a big fan of personally. It's going to be Mooney and 207 that he gives up in exchange for the 204, the 302, and the 307. So basically the way I look at it is...
These are rookie picks, correct?
Correct. Rookie picks, sorry. Mooney for the 302 and the 307 is kind of what I see it. And I'd rather Mooney, man. I know, like, it's appealing. It's rookie season. You want to get those young picks. But realistically, we're talking about what? Nico Collins and Hunter Long. Josh Palmer for. I would rather Darnell Mooney. We saw flashes from him. He's still a 22-year-old wide receiver. They brought in a huge quarterback upgrade that can actually put the ball down the field to Darnell Mooney. I would rather Mooney here. I'd honestly put Mooney probably on par with value to that 204 pick that you got. So the fact that you basically gave up the 207 as well, I just wouldn't.
The only thing I will say is if somebody slides at that 204, if Elijah Moore or Rashad Bateman or someone like that were to slide, then this deal is worthwhile. But at the 204, you're probably looking at Terrace Marshall, Rondell Moore, right? Like that's probably what you're looking at in terms of value, maybe De'Ami Brown or Amon-Ra or something like that, or even like a Michael Carter or Trey Sermon. So I agree. I would rather have Darnell Mooney in the 207.
Yep, for sure. Sorry, Montreal just scored again, but we can get on to the next.
We'll go through these trades pretty rapid fire since they were pretty quick.
This deal, as much as I didn't like your first deal, this deal is fantastic for you, in my opinion. You gave up Jameis Winston and Josh Jacobs, and in return, we're able to receive the 105, the 205, and a future 2022 second. Let's just look at that in assigned player value right now. You basically traded Jameis Winston and Josh Jacobs for what's probably going to be a Kyle Pitts, Justin Fields, Zach
Travis
Wilson,
Etienne.
Travis Etienne type. The 205, which is probably, again, a Terrace Marshall, and a future second for Jameis Winston and Josh Jacobs, who Jameis Winston is more of a short-term asset, and Josh Jacobs, I would prefer the 105 to straight up over period. So I love this move for you, and in general, it provides a more long-term stability option comparatively to what Jameis Winston was going to give you. So great move there, and then you could look at the next deal. He gave up Miles Sanders straight up for the 107, and again, love this move. I have Javonte Williams and Travis Etienne both ranked higher in my dynasty rankings than Miles Sanders, and those are two guys that should be there at the 107.
Exactly. Yeah. Nothing to add there.
Super simple. The next move, it's a little dicey. I'm kind of confused at the direction that you're going with for your overall moves, because it seems like on one end you're trying to get younger, and then on the other end you're acquiring superstars like DeAndre Hopkins. But you can kind of outline this trade.
Yeah. So we're sure that he acquired DeAndre Hopkins in this trade? Yeah. Okay. So then I probably wouldn't have done this either, because you gave up the 107 that you got for Miles Sanders essentially, and you also give up Chase Claypool in the 209 for DeAndre Hopkins in the 202. So I mean, like value-wise, it probably matches up, right? Like Chase Claypool in the 107 is probably about on par with DeAndre Hopkins. And then obviously any difference would be made up by the difference of the 202 and the 209. But
it's just the direction.
It's the direction of the team, right? Like if you're trying to get younger, it looks like you sold Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs, who are two, depreciating, I would say, assets, even though they are young players still. I probably wouldn't have traded for a guy like DeAndre Hopkins in that situation.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. So we could see here, with the same guy that I guess you traded away the 207, you acquired it back, but I would prefer Michael Gallup here. You guys can see it on the screen, but 207, 303, and a 2022 third for Michael Gallup. Listen, guys, Michael Gallup is still a 24-year-old wide receiver who has an 1,100-yard season under the belt and is going to be a free agent this upcoming year. That, to me, straight up is worth more than this package. If I'm trading away Michael Gallup, I would at least need a trade offer of the 202 type value or higher. And simply put, I don't think the 207, the 303, and a future third get you up to 202 value, because you're looking at a Terrace Marshall, De'Ami Brown, a Kadarius Toney, Rondell Moore. I would rather Gallup by a pretty large margin comparatively to those guys.
See, I might be on the side of the picks of this one, because I think the 207, like you said, it's probably, Terrace Marshall, De'Ami Brown, Rondell Moore, something like that. And I wouldn't take that straight up over Gallup, but given the two third rounders that you're getting, I'd probably take that. I'm not as high on Michael Gallup as you are. I don't think he's going to get some super big contract in free agency. I think he's probably going to be a tertiary signing, and maybe he has like a Robbie Anderson, Corey Davis like contract, and he goes somewhere and has like a good, secondary role or something like that. But he's not, he doesn't move the chain, like move the needle enough for me that I'm like, no, I wouldn't take that, because if I could get Terrace Marshall with that 207, I would rather have Terrace Marshall than Michael Gallup straight up.
Interesting. I would personally still rather Gallup. Again, I don't think Marshall's going to be able to even make it to the 207.
No, probably not. But if I can get him, then I would rather have him straight up than Gallup.
Maybe. I don't know. But the final deal, this is an overpay.
And again, like the direction of these deals doesn't make sense to me, right? Because you had initially you were going for, it looks like a rebuild, right? Based on the first like 3 or 4 deals that you did. And then you went out and acquired DeAndre Hopkins. And then you also went out and acquired Keenan Allen, who's another aging receiver. And
Yeah.
in my opinion, even if you were a contender, I wouldn't have given this up.
Oh, this is, I'm sorry. Like, I got to be honest with you guys. I'm not just going to try to sugarcoat and say everything's dandy and freaking flowers, but 2023 first, 204, 2023 4, and also a 2024 1 and 2. You guys can see on the screen for Keenan Allen. Again, a depreciating asset. I would say right straight up, I know this might sound cruel, but
you got hosed.
Hosed. The 204 and that 2024 2 is probably fair value, or that 2023 1 and 2024.
And to be clear, Keenan Allen's my wide receiver 6 in redraft right now. So
yes.
I think he's going to be phenomenal this year and probably next year too. But after that, we're talking about a guy that'll probably be 31, 32, 33 years old.
Adam Thielen range.
Right. And then you're talking about a 2023 first. Again, we talked about how good that class is supposed to be. And if nothing else, these assets are all going to appreciate in value while the asset you got is going to go down in value.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about it right now. As crazy as it sounds, it looks like an overpay right now, but it's going to get even more lopsided within a year and a half.
Right.
Especially
so
when
overall, you made looks like 6 trades. We had 2 that were like mez, and then 1 bad one and 3 good ones. So I mean, you made out good on that one, but I probably would have stopped making trades after you got the 107 for Miles Sanders personally.
Yeah, for sure. So we can move on. We have 2 left. We try to rapid fire this. I kind of want to finish this within the hour if we can. That's going to be JoshyHol's. I've got a middle of the road team, but an up and coming squad after rebuilding for the past 2.5 years. With the state of my team and my upcoming first, should I be patient and see how the season goes, or should I use them and maybe acquire a lower tier running back or a wide receiver to really build and try to attack this year? So he also mentions it's not a tight end premium, but you guys can see the team. He's also got 2 2022 first and a 2023 first in addition to this. And he's got Goddard outlined here, but I do see Pitts lined up right behind him. And I personally would start Pitts. But overall, I mean, wide receiver 3 is lacking. Your wide receiver depth as a whole is kind of lacking.
I love this team. I don't think there's any problems with this team personally.
The wide receiver depth.
Sure, but you got two ones next year. Like, okay, so
that's fair.
when you say like, should I see how the season goes and stuff like that? Absolutely, right? If your team is 3-5, then don't go trading one of your 2022 firsts to try and make the playoffs. But you have a longevity, like your team is set up for longevity, so you don't need to rush. You said you were coming off of a rebuild. You have some great pieces, right? Like you have the 102, like consensus 102 in Dynasty startup drafts in Josh Allen. You have Trey Lance, who we both really believe in. You have 3 really solid young running backs in Najee Harris, Javonte Williams.
It's a 1 QB, by the way.
And is it it's a 1 quarterback? Even still, man, like those 2 QBs are still really good.
Agreed.
And then you have Diggs, who's a top 5 dynasty wide receiver. Chase Claypool, I really believe in. You have 2 great young tight ends. I wouldn't rush anything, to be honest. Yeah, obviously your wide receivers are not where they need to be, but if you're going to be lacking at any position, that is the position you want to be lacking at. And you could probably move Dallas Goedert mid-season if Kyle Pitts is already tearing the league up. You could probably move Dallas Goedert for a pretty solid wide receiver.
I think, a pretty solid wide receiver. If a team's contending, they don't have a great tight end, you could probably get a late 2022 first for him, honestly.
You could even move, like right now, you could even move Evan Ingram for a receiver. Like, I mean, someone probably believes in Evan Ingram in your league. I don't know what you could get for Evan Ingram, but maybe it's only like an Adam Thielen or something like that, but that would still improve your team.
Yep, for sure. So overall, again, Corey basically hit the nail on the head there. See where you're at mid-season, depending on if you're competing, if you're looking like you're going to rebuild and compete for 2022, make the adjustments on the fly. But overall, I think you're in a very good situation on your team from both a longevity and a potential compete standpoint. So overall, good job. We can move on to the final team, though. That's going to be BranCarmichael. So he took the advice that we told him last week, and he basically says, where can I go from this now? He got an extra first. The format is a 12-team super flex, 3 wide receiver, tight end premium, and a 6-point touchdown pass. So you guys can see the screen, but Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Gibson, Swift, Latavius, Mike Davis, and fodder, Hill, McLaurin, A-Rob, Pitts. So overall, looking at this team right now, he's got Pitts in a tight end premium as well. That is fun to see in the very least. What are your initial thoughts on looking at this team?
Yeah, looking at his team, I would like a refresher if you know it off the top of your head what we told him to do last week. But
I honestly don't remember, to be quite honest. He didn't really outline it in the question on Discord, but let me just see if he said anything. Maybe I can scroll up a little bit and see. Yeah, well, again, we talked about it in video. I didn't even type it out. So overall, you can remind us what we told you, but I guess it worked because you got an extra first out of it. So overall, this is a type of team I'd be going into. Again, I know we say this for basically half the teams in this, but if you have 2022 first, as you mentioned, you got an extra first, kind of go into that midseason, see where you're at. You got a good overall team right now. You could probably use overall a little bit of depth, but
QB is your biggest weak point for sure.
Yeah.
This team is starting to ring some bells to me. The fact that he does have Tyrod Taylor. Is this the team that had Kirk Cousins? And maybe I think we told him to go get a different quarterback. I don't even remember, to be honest. But either way, your team is in pretty decent shape. Obviously, your biggest weakness, in my opinion, is a quarterback 3 or a quarterback 2, depending on what you think of Daniel Jones. But like as far as your running backs are concerned, you're pretty solid there. You got 3 pretty decent running backs. Wide receivers are pretty good. And like you said, you have Pitts in a tight end premium. So you should feel this one out, see what your record is at like week 7 or whatever, and decide where you want to go from there. But just because you're losing, like let's say you're 3-5 in week 8, just because you're not winning, don't like strip your team down and sell it. Just like, recognize, don't trade a first away to try and acquire a player, and maybe look to sell somebody if you need to.
Yep, for sure.
Like Allen Robinson, if someone's willing to break your door down to come get Allen Robinson.
Yeah, Allen Robinson,
Brandon Cooks, even. You might even be able to flip
Mike Davis
for like a second rounder in midseason or something like that.
Yeah, like Mike Davis, maybe Emmanuel Sanders balling on the Bills. You can flip him for a third straight up. Like, honestly, something like that could happen. But overall, I think you're in a good spot. You have a lot of flexibility, again, with those 2 firsts as well. And in terms of 6 point per touchdown pass, you got a very good overall option long-term with Lawrence. You just kind of need to shore up that depth behind him. But overall, I think you're in a decent position, and you got the future assets to be able to adjust on the fly if you need be. So anyways, we're about 57 minutes into this video. If you made it this far, as Corey mentioned, comment down below. Corey, take it away. What did you tell him to comment?
No man's land. Comment down below, no man's land. You never want to be in no man's land in Dynasty. If you're in no man's land, you're better off rebuilding.
Yep, 100%. So anyways, we will see you next week for the next episode of Dynasty Decisions. Take it easy, y'all.
Why do you need the